Yes, hello everyone. Welcome back to Newcastle Fans TV. So, have you watched the latest Amazon documentary, or did you see the leaks, everybody? Hope you're doing all well. Well, I'm struggling a little bit. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I think I'm coming down with something because my voice is literally gone. I've already had a nap this evening, so yeah, we'll crack on for my twist and everybody. But welcome if you're watching us here on YouTube. But we had to focus on the third episode of Amazon's documentary We Are Newcastle United, which is a real eye-opener this documentary season, and this episode is heavily focused on what is on the pitch as well. So it all begins, of course, with the boardroom at the very top of the episode, and obviously they have a meeting about the top four, about the potential finances that it can bring, and obviously the squad will be stretched, of course, as well with extra games. You're guaranteed at least 6 more games, but if Newcastle progress in either the Europa League or, of course, the Champions League, we will have more games, of course, so that will put a strain on the squad. A lot of focus was on Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak in this episode. Up top, of course, we know the competition between the two. We know at the back end of last season, both of them were scoring goals. It was a very difficult choice for Eddie Howe, which was mentioned quite a lot of times in this episode. Of course, he does speak about the two, that both of them are unhappy. Obviously, Wilson admits that his injury forced Newcastle to step into the market and go for a striker. Obviously, we're known down the years Callum Wilson has injury issues, but that's forced Newcastle to go in for the market. That's what he's expressed on camera. Of course, the episode begins predominantly with the game against Man United. Obviously, we know that we got beaten in the Carabao Cup final, but this was 4 or 5 weeks after that, and this was like revenge/avenge on that defeat. Of course, Eric Ten Hag was slagging off Newcastle United, criticised them, saying that were time waste. So, of course, war flags do feature quite heavily in this one as well, and we'll talk about them in a second. But in the dressing room, Eddie Howe picks out Eric Ten Hag's comments. He drops an F-bomb, and of course, he tells them to go and blow them away. If they want to have it, let's fucking give it to them. So that's what I like about Eddie Howe. It's a different side of him. It's a different side that we haven't really seen, because on camera, it's very polite, very well reserved as well. I think he thinks before he speaks as well. So really eye-opener. And I like that, we've seen it with the last episode that Amanda Staveley mentioned that she's pissed off with the Premier League. And obviously, naturally, you show your real personality when you swear a lot more. You can trust a person a lot more, I feel, when they swear as well, because it's a natural in modern society, especially with me and my family and neighbourhoods. I mean, we swear, and it's just a natural reaction when you're frustrated, because I do. You've probably seen it on a few videos when Newcastle have been beaten down the years. I'll drop a few F-bombs or the whole carry on of Mike Ashley. But yeah, I like that. And of course, we blew them away. No doubt about it. For me, it's not the best performance of the season. It's the second best against Man United. It was literally a 2-0 hammering. It was all one way. I remember that game. Obviously, we battered them, went in half-time 0-0. And then in the second half, we scored by Willock, I nearly forgot here, and Callum Wilson, of course, off the bench. Obviously, there was a feature on them, which we're going to come to them in a second. And Newcastle moved back into the top four with that win. And then after the game, it then switches to the upgrade of the training ground. I've been there twice now, and it's not all the way around, just on the outside. When we invited down by the club to Newcastle United women's training, where I went to the wrong area. It wasn't the only channel, was it, Renty? But yeah, but with the focus switches on, it cost them 10 million. Yasser Al-Rumayyan came to the training ground, visited it to see the progress. Of course, we've got the obviously upgraded facilities with the indoor healing pool. Is that what you call it? Is that what you want to call it? That, and we will continue to see Amazon in the We'll continue to see his interview with Amazon in the boardroom, talking about certain things as the episode goes on. And then I do mention, obviously, the player profile switches back to Callum Wilson, of course, talking about his tough upbringing as a kid. Wilson, and this was a big one. You've seen this in the video title. Callum Wilson turned down Aston Villa before coming to Newcastle. I think this is the second time this is now being mentioned, despite Aston Villa literally being on his doorstep. He's a Coventry lad, of course, just next to each other, Birmingham and Coventry. And Wilson admits that when he left the area, he grew as a person and he built his life. And he didn't see the need to come back to the area. He built it away, and he wanted to continue that, hence the reason why he came to Newcastle. He visited a former school back in Coventry. His painting is still there, which is quite incredible. He met, obviously, one of the teachers who spoke about it. His teacher was saying that he was a troubled kid. You get up to mischief. He was hard to handle. And the only really hope that Callum Wilson said was football. That was his only hope. And he also credits his childhood for his successes, which is strange in one sense because you would think someone with a poor upbringing. I had a poor upbringing as a kid as well. And I can kind of relate to a lot of what Callum Wilson's went through. In that, that's credited, that's made the personality that he is today with the success that he is as a professional footballer, which is brilliant. And then the focus switches to the 2 away games, which I remember this because a lot of this is just, wow, that only feels like last week. Because I remember it because the West Ham and Brentford, I stayed in High Wycombe, just outside. I spent like 4 or 5 days away down south. And obviously we went to West Ham and we absolutely battered them. We won 5-1. It didn't feel like a 5-1 win, especially probably in the first half. But, we scored 5, and you remember Wilson started that game and scored 2. So Eddie Howe was mixing the side up a little bit. And obviously Isak came off the bench and lobbed Fabianski. We all remember his pose where he just stands there and just watches the ball bounce in the net. There's that famous picture of Fabianski doing exactly the same pose right next to him, which was at that time, there was loads of memes and funniness about it. And then against Brentford, Wilson was back to the bench. Isak start. That was more of a tougher game, and that a very tough game. You remember Ivan Toney missed his only penalty where Pope saved it. They had a goal disallowed as well. There's a lot of VAR incidents. It was a sunny day. And, of course, Wilson was brought on at half-time with Newcastle being 1-0 down. And, of course, the 2 link up really for the first time. I think it's the first time they might play together as well on the pitch, up top anyways. And, of course, Isak scores a brilliant little curl on the edge of the box. And Newcastle turned the game around. Obviously, Joe Linton scored. Well, I think it went down to his own goal, I think. But Joe Linton scored the equaliser. But, Isak got the winner. And, obviously, Newcastle win once again. And then it switches to our good friend Darren Eales, of course. We've seen Darren Eales twice in America. He absolutely loves Steve because Steve is wild. Darren Eales was loving that. He visited the brew house, which I was at, of course, with Steve when we went over, of course. So all of this is like fresh memories coming back to us, all of this now. And, of course, in the upcoming pre-season tour and the summer series, sort of Darren Eales went over there to push that. Nobby Solana was there, which was a shame Nobby wasn't filmed there as well at the brew house. But he popped on the local radio station, of course, as well, to chat all things football. And Profile was on Eales quite a bit at this stage of the episode with his background in Atlanta. Obviously, we had Jay in Atlanta. Big shout out to you, Jay. We've done a video on Darren Eales whilst outside the brew house, so make sure you have a look at that on our channel last month. A fantastic, in-depth look at how Darren Eales, from a fan's perspective with Jay, which was brilliant. And Eales goes on to say, back in the boardroom, it's at St James Park, saying that the club need more international fans. He does mention that the local supporter is the heartbeat of the club, i.e. Geordie, people who go, but the international fans means more revenue for the club. So there was a little feature on War Flags. It's separate away from that, but they were a little bit worried that they don't want Newcastle to become a tourist club where people are taking photos constantly, and they don't really want that. But I think, unfortunately, naturally that will happen if Newcastle are more successful, of course, as well. So that was a nice feature on War Flags, especially I think it was Graham Robson that the featured quite heavily as well. And obviously after a battering away at Aston Villa, which they didn't highlight, we were awful against Aston Villa. We were the worst performance of the season, getting battered 3-0. We deserved it. Villa were absolutely sensational that day. And then we faced Spurs. I mean, that for me is performance of the season, without a shadow of a doubt. A rival, if you remember, at the time. I know Spurs obviously declined and fell down the league, but at that very stage, Spurs were a rival for Newcastle. We all know what happened that day. We were 5-0 up after 21 minutes. 5-0 up. I was in the Gallagher and thinking, I wish all the goals were at the other end. But I mean, it was a hell of a day. What a day. And I said it so many times last season. Were you there? It's one of those moments where you're there. So I'll say, in 10-year time, can't remember when Newcastle were 5-0 up against Spurs, who were currently in the Champions League spots or thereabouts with us. Unbelievable, of course. Best performance of the season. We won 6-1 eventually, of course. But we were 5-0 up after 21 minutes, man. The goals just flying in. Remember that Willock assist? Bloody hell. What assist of the season with me. What a goal that was. Just the assist. Of course, Wilson obviously came off the bench and scored yet again. So remember, those two were chopping and changing a lot at this stage of the season, the competition up top, which is healthy because it was bringing the best out. Wilson obviously got back in the England side as well. And what a day that was. What a day. What a performance of the season. If you pinpoint last season, that's the game for me. Quite incredible. Jacob Murphy with that goal, and like he's going like that all the way. Amazing. Mickey Take. And obviously that stage as well of the season. We're seeing a lot of Jacob Murphy memes and Mickey Take and waving bye-bye to Southampton players and all of that. Brilliant. And I think Jacob Murphy got subbed on a month or two earlier, subbed off, sorry, smiling, which is so weird, but yeah, it's the character that he is, which is brilliant. Congratulations to him and Loris Karius being dads recently. And of course, the next week's episode is the run-in for the top 4. So it's a big, and obviously you hear the big news with the change of the kit supplier, which shock if you haven't heard of this, but of course Adidas are coming in as well, so it's not a real surprise us at NFTV. However, it was leaked, the episodes 3 and 4, and that's how Win got put out, and obviously Newcastle had to tweet something about it because someone at Amazon's pressed the wrong button and made them episodes public, and obviously an hour and a half later it's all our Twitter, and yeah, but welcome Adidas to Newcastle United. Of course, there were some famous faces in there, famous fans. Raul, of course, has been on the channel a few times as well, which is great. But yeah, great to see, of course, as well. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. Wonderful episodes, 3rd episode in, and the 4th one pushes towards, as I say, with the top 4, of course. Well, I don't know the story of that, but yeah, I love this series, me, especially behind the scenes stuff. I want to see more of it. It gives you just, it makes you feel proud to be a Geordie, that pride inside of you, and I want to see more of it. It's like the door's only slightly open for me. I want to see fully open. Obviously, I know that with restrictions, they don't want everything being released. Of course not, but yeah, I loved it, me, and I can't wait for the next episode to come as well, which will bring you the final video next week when it does air as well. Apologies, I would have got this out a little bit earlier, but I had a nap, as I say, which I wasn't up to things, so I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, playing my little violin. But yes, that is it. Just drop us a like if you liked the episode. What was your favourite part of that episode? Was it the 2 performances against Man United and Spurs? Was it the Callum Wilson story? Was it the Darren Eales, of course, visiting America? Let us know, please do, because I'm intrigued to know how you are feeling about it. But that's it, everybody, from me and NFTV. We'll see you very soon.